Hi, everyone. This is Mike Leahy. Thanks for joining us today for our Pulse Dashboard Accounting training class today. We haven't had one of these in quite a while, and I thought it would be good to have another one. So we'll introduce ourselves. This is Mike Leahy. You're seeing my photo on the screen here. We can all shake hands over the phone, and nobody will infect anybody. Ann Hayner has joined us today. Monty wasn't able to. I'm sorry, I don't have a picture of Ann here. I didn't know if she was going to join us or not. So, but thanks for joining. I always try to put photos up here so we can get a little bit more personalization. And I'll take this off, and we'll get started here. Today we are going to follow the handout. So I sent everybody 2 or 3 handouts. One was the handout of our agenda, our training material today that we are going to follow. The other one that I sent was the Pulse definitions document, and I think that can be a good desk reference. Some of it is, most of it is operations oriented, but it provides good definitions of different terms, and everything that we're doing in Dashboard follows APICS rules. So as you're reading that, you'll know that that's all sort of APICS certified. I also sent you, everyone, a copy of our latest catalog of additional custom reports that we've developed. So in other words, we have standard reports, the majority of what we'll look at today, and then we have custom reports. And the custom reports can be a combination of us realizing that there's a need for something specialized, and we go ahead and put together a report, but it hasn't made it into a general product yet. And then we have a customer like you who will say, this is great, but I need a report that does such and such, such and such. And I'll show you some of those today. And then we go ahead and add those. And we have been accumulating, like 40 of them. And we thought we'd put together the catalog, which contains maybe 20 or 25 of them. So those are all available at no cost. Some of them do require the designer module, and most of you have the designer module, but it's only a nominal $1,500. But the idea is that some of the reports require the use of the designer module. On the front page, I'm doing grandstanding right now. On the front page of the accounting training, it says the big picture, tips for successful Macola and accounting processing. And more people are realizing how important, how critical dates are within Macola. This customer order, when is it really supposed to be shipped? This purchase order, when is it really supposed to arrive? This production order, when is it really supposed to be completed? All of those have trickle-down effect, and they affect everything in the system, including the accounting processing. Also, what haunts a lot of companies is production orders that never got themselves closed, especially in the shop floor area. Until you close that order, none of the variances get applied. So if you have an order from 6 months ago that never got closed, or if they close it later, it just causes uncertainty. It just causes havoc. And then the last item I have here is just accurate on order and allocated quantities. And this is, you probably all heard this before. Somebody in your company ordered 1,000 of something, and only 980 of them arrived. Well, you know that remaining 20 is never going to arrive. But in Macola, unless you properly close out that purchase order, that 20 everybody will think, the system will think that that remaining 20 will somehow arrive magically into the future, and it throws off the planning process because you've overstated what's on order. Okay, so we're going to go on to the second page. Everything in Dashboard, I'm going to go up to Help, and I'm going to go to About. And right here you see our phone number. This is actually Monty Guy's direct phone number and his email address. And you have unlimited phone support, unlimited email support, unlimited training, and we even joke that you have unlimited retraining for people who need a little bit of a reminder. So feel free, call often. We love hearing feedback, because at the same time, Monty may say, or this is your opportunity to say, this is great, but have you thought about a particular report that might really help my company? The other thing that we wanted to talk about, we're on page 2 of the handout, is refreshing the modules. When you come in the morning, today's date will be up here, and you can say refresh the current module, which in this case would be the executive, or you could refresh all modules. Now, if you're only going to take a quick look at something, there really is no reason to refresh all the modules. So you have to make a decision. Obviously, it will be faster if you just refresh one module, or even if you go down here and you just double click, like let's say this is the only report you want, this cash balance, current balances, and you just double click on the blue bar, or you can click on this little circular thing that says refresh report. It does the same thing. For those who are never at their desk and they want to come back and have the system automatically refreshed, this screen right here, I'm clicking on auto refresh. You can set that. You shouldn't set it for anything less than 30, but the idea is that every 30 minutes, the system will refresh itself. The idea being that when you come back to your desk, everything will be refreshed. You also can turn off, if you have a report that takes quite a while to run, if you right click on top of this blue header, I right click and I say, well, I actually did it wrong. It's at the, excuse me, it's at the tab level. I right click and I say, I turn this off. So in other words, if I uncheck this, it means that this entire tab will no longer refresh itself automatically when I say refresh the current module. Okay, so just a little reminder things there. So now we're going to dive into page 3, but let me mention something. I'll just kind of do a refresher. We have new people that are constantly coming on. I'll just go over my little 5-minute demo, which shows you pretty comprehensively what the system's designed to do. Okay, each one of these reports is movable. You can copy and paste it. You can right click. It's Control-C, Control-V, just like Excel. And you can copy it and move it to another module if you want to. Everything in each module is drill downable. So in this case, I'm just single clicking to this 639,000, and it comes up with a screen. And these screens, you can move the fields around. You can click on an ascending or descending. I can also put in this blue bar here as my filter bar. So if I put in CIN, I bring up just everything that has, in this case, Cincinnati distributors. And if I want to get rid of this filter, so this is what's called the filter row. But more importantly, when you move things around here, if you want this to be over here and somebody else wants it the other way, the system automatically saves it. There's no save function. It's automatically saved whenever you make a change. And then the next time you come back into the screen will be that way. The other thing I want to emphasize is the flexibility of this. Okay, we provide the screen and you say this looks great, but it's missing the state. So I'm going to go over to this grid here. We call it the column chooser. And what we've done is these are all the fields in Macola that have anything to do with sales or inventory or bookings or invoicing. And we've converted them all to business English. So there's no need to know technical stuff. So what I'm going to do is I wanted to add the state. I'm just going to put an STATE. Here's the customer state. I'm going to double click. It brought it over here. And now I'm going to say OK. And now the customer state will be on my screen. I'm going to move this over here. The customer state will be on my screen permanently. It won't be on anybody else's. So don't feel awkward or squeamish about making changes. You can't break the software. Everything in the software is exportable to Excel. That's this button right here. Everything in the system is also printable. I'll show you the print image. We don't print very much anymore because you can go back and reprint. But what's nice about this is I can go up here to File and I can save the document to a PDF, or if I need to email something to a coworker or the boss or a customer or a vendor, I just click on Send via email. I save it to a PDF, and it emails it to the customer or whoever you're sending it to. So again, everything has drill down. You can move things around as you want to. Everything is exportable, everything is printable, everything is PDFable, everything is emailable, and I can also have additional layouts at my fingertips. So maybe occasionally I want to go in and I want to look at it instead of by customer, I want to look at it by item number with margins. So here's a good example of that. Now this particular one down here, this is by item. So this one actually has a bonus. If I click up above, I can see all the orders that are outstanding for that particular item. Even the graphs are drill downable. If I click here, I can drill down and see the underlying detail. Okay, so now that's my 5-minute introduction. Now you know everything is drill downable. Anytime that I see a number, I can click on the number, I can drill down, move things around, so on and so on, even move entire screens around. I can actually, if I grab these corners, I can make them smaller or larger, and I can move this to any other screen that I want to, or any other module that I want to. Okay, so now we're on the top of page 3, and we're talking about the executive modules. So today our session is on accounting, but that includes 2 modules, the executive module, and it includes the financial control module. So first of all, you have some people in the organization that you do not want them to see general ledger accounts under any circumstance. And there's ways to control what accounts you show to people. So I'm going to switch over to my other database over here, and I'm going to go into user control. Now this is something maybe you don't do, but you know that your administrator for dashboard can do. You go into user control, and up here it says GL account security. So here's where you say, for this individual, these are the accounts. You know, I can set up certain account ranges, cost centers, cost units, and so on that I want to allow that person to see or not see. So in my particular case, I have all set up because I don't have any restrictions. But if you have somebody else, you may just want to leave this to null or not null to nothing, so they can't see, they can't see anything. Okay. So that talks about what accounts they can specifically get to. So you go to user control, you go to account security, and then from within here, and you can have multiple rows. So if you have account numbers that are not consecutive, you can set up multiple ranges. Okay, we're on the top of page 4. We are diving into the software now. Okay, so the first thing we're going to look at is this current balances. This is a no frills little report, but it comes in handy. It gives you kind of an instant view of the accounts that you want to look at, and it can be any balance sheet or any balance sheet account. And with all of these, you'll see that there is a red, we call it the red wrench or the red setup icon. So almost all screens have a setup icon. And when I click on that, now this is current balances, so I have to dictate to the software what accounts I want to look at. So here I have set up my accounts, inventory, receivables, payables, and cash. And then for each one of these, if I click on this side here, I get the account numbers that make up inventory, the account numbers that make up receivables, payables, and so on. And if I had multiple accounts, then or non-consecutive accounts, I could also then add it this way. So once I've defined that, then the other thing is you want everything like the assets and liabilities. One will show a positive and one will show negative. So you invert the value to fix that. So here I have that accounts payable, receivable. So this is just kind of a little fun thing. You can tuck it away in the corner, and you can use it, but it's handy for maybe top executives that they just want to see what the number is, and they kind of provide they feel good, or they monitor things in terms of that. Okay, so that's one item. Now we're going to be we are on number 4, which is accounts receivable. Okay, so this is a little cool. There's more to talk about here. when we first developed the software, this is what our aging looked like, was just a summary aging. Again, you go into the red wrench and you can set up your settings here. You can have up to 8 different periods if you want to, or you can click on here and it will retrieve the settings that are in Macola. But one of the reasons I want you to look at this is there's a detail box and a summary box. So this is the summary, this is the detail. They're both identical. So we developed this, and then people saw that we could add the terms code, we could add the phone number, we could add the contact name, and people said, and they wanted to use this for collections. Okay, so that worked out very well. So then people said, well, we call up customers and we're trying to collect, but we have Post-it notes all over the screen because we don't have a place in Macola to put in collection notes, and we don't have any follow-up dates. So we added this capability at the customer level to have collection notes. So what you do is you just have to have these columns here. So these columns in collections, so you go over to, if you're not using this right now, you go over to the column chooser and just type in COLL, and you'll see these are customer collection notes and then invoice collection notes. So once I've added those, then I just right click and I say customer collection notes, and then it brings it up. If I want to, I can put in a timestamp and then add something to that. I hit enter by mistake. I can also establish a follow-up date if I want to. And then we've also provided an optional priority where you can have a priority like an A, B, or C. Actually, this is user defined, so we don't have this set up. But we also then offer not only collection notes at the customer level, but also at the apply to level. This isn't a good one to get. Let me get this first one here. So now I can put in collection notes at the apply to level. And you remember what I said 5 minutes ago, that if we want to email this to somebody, so let's say that you're trying to collect, or one of your staff is collecting from, and they're saying, no, 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 we paid all this, you know, go away. You can go here to the print function, and you can go up to file, and you can go up to send via email PDF. So while you're on the phone with that individual, you can send them kind of a mini statement, and they'll have it along with you to reference. I should mention also, Ann Hayner is with me today, and she is helping if you send questions, but you can send questions through the chat, but please feel free to just interrupt me and ask a question. So I'll just stop for a second here. Anybody have any questions or comments they want to make right now? Most everyone is
I don't have anything in the chat right now from anyone, Mike.
Okay, very good. Well, if there are questions, just interrupt me. The same thing applies to accounts payable. I'm going to exit out of here, and I'm going to go into accounts payable. The same thing. This is the summary, and this is the detail. And the only difference between them is in the setup, I have chosen summary versus detail. Okay, so these are all workable. There's tons of information that you can add. All this is available. Everything is converted to business English. This is a, you know, you can customize these. You can't hurt anything, you can't break anything. In this case, this is read-only. I should mention that these collection notes are inside of your Macola database. They're just not part of the Macola, you know, the standard structure. But anything that we do that enhances the software, adds on to the software, it's in the same database. So in other words, it gets backed up every night and so on. Okay, we're going to go to General Ledger Control, and this has turned out to be a really useful piece of software for us. First of all, we use this when a customer calls up and has an issue and they can't get something to balance or they can't figure out whatever. This is our one-stop shopping to do any and all account analysis, GL analysis that needs to be done. So again, in my setup, I can define what account numbers I want to have displayed. In this case, I'm displaying all. I can choose a fixed range. I can choose a dynamic range, or I can choose a trailing range. If nothing is showing up when you run this, you want to look at this date range. Regardless of the buttons, this is the date range that will be displayed. So if you're getting only information from this year and not last year, something like that. So the idea is I'm defining what accounts I want. I can show the profit center and department, cost center and cost unit. I can drill down and see the underlying detail. So at this point, I'm in the lowest level in the general ledger. I'm at the actual accounting entry. And again, I have pretty much everything on here, but I have the column chooser to add more information. Now, this particular one, I've chosen to add the package that it came from. So you can see some of these entries are journal entries. Others came through accounts payable vouchering. If there's a job number or a project, that's included. If there's a reference and so on. So this is the software that we use when you call up and say, I can't get something to balance, or something's missing, or where did it go? So this is extremely powerful. So we are now on page 6. Okay, so let's summarize what we've done so far. We have the areas of interest to accounting the department personnel are divided into the executive module and into the financial control module. So within the executive module, in the summary, we talked about our current balances. We talked about our accounts receivable and accounts payable, summary versus detail. And for accounts receivable, we have collection notes at the customer level, as well as the apply to level. So this is one where you can say, they requested that we send another invoice, or they promised to pay. Back here is the one where you say they never pay on time, left my 99th message, they don't return calls, that kind of stuff, which is global. Okay, then we also talked about the power of this general ledger control. I've chosen in here to select all accounts. That probably is maybe you might want to break it down into multiple screens and have just certain, maybe you want asset accounts in certain areas, or expense accounts, however you want to. But the idea is that you have this tremendous tool to do general ledger transaction analysis or research work. Okay, so we're going to shift into the financial control module. And the first one we're going to look at, when we developed this about 10 years ago, we had a customer in Atlanta that wanted to make their department heads more accountable. And you can all relate to this. It's the 10th of the month, and the production manager comes into the office, and he or she is complaining, and you charged me for this $100. This should have gone to sales department. This should have gone to R&D. This is not my stuff. Please remove this because I don't look good. Well, of course, in the middle of the next month, there's not too much you can do about this. So what we decided is, what this customer was asking for was a real-time analysis for that manager to be able to see actual versus planned versus the prior year each month. Some people are visual oriented, want to see a graph. If everything looks good, he or she's going to think that's fine. But for those who want to see the details, well, then they just come down here, and then they can click on this and see what is being charged to their account, to their department. And if they don't like it, then the idea being that that's the time that they can show some concern. Okay, so, and we set this up so that department manager for a department cannot see the results of any other department. They can't change anything. They can only look at their department. So we found then that not all companies have real accountability. They'd like to, but they want to. The accounting department wants to keep an eye on operations. So you develop this for yourself. You don't show it to them, but you just, or this is, you look here and see what's going on in the sales department. Okay, so that's fine. Then we learned that people were not using it for departmental activity at all. They were using it because they have certain accounts situations that are out of control and they want to monitor them. So in this case here, instead of being by department, I'm just looking at freight expense because I have a problem with freight expense. Maybe I have a problem with building expenses. So again, in my setup, I'm going to define that account that I want. I define whether it's a P&L account or a balance sheet account. And I now am able to look at what's going on just for that individual freight. It's not a department anymore, it's an activity. So this screen is real good. Again, we designed it for some people like to see visual, they're very visual. Other people just want to see the details. We have drill down for everything. And again, when you set this up, it's set up by the administrator. We're assuming most everyone in the accounting department usually is an administrator. But if you're setting it up by department, you're setting it up, you're like publishing it to that person. They cannot modify it. They can't see other departments' activities. So this is this might be something to look at. Okay, so we're on the top of page 7. Any questions on any feedback on this departmental expense analysis that we have? Anybody seeing this for the first time today, and maybe this would be handy?
Mike, this is Ann. I'm seeing this for the first time today, and I think it looks awesome. I never thought of using it this way before.
Yes, it's yeah. And for those who, a lot of you know Ann Hayner. She's been around the Macola community for almost as long as I have. We won't tell you how long that's been, but Ann has been the owner of a Macola reseller organization, consulting organization, just like our company. And then she retired, and then she went to work for WISIS, the warehouse management barcoding people. And you may have run into her there. She was in charge of customer support for them. And then she retired again. And I'll tell them this little story. Ann said to me that if I ever come back to work, I will only come back to work for Leahy Consulting. And one day she called me up and said she was ready, and we weren't even really looking for somebody at the time. So it's worked out wonderfully. So she's got a tremendous background in Macola and Macola customers, and so that's been great. And one of the magic aspects of dashboard is that there's always little things. It's so broad that, and the way you adapt it, and we'll start seeing that you can change the screen and make it do something else, that it's very, very flexible, and it's not unusual at all for us to see. Our developer is Adriano Feria, and sometimes he'll show us stuff, and Monty and I will say, we've never seen that before. When did? And he'll say, well, I developed that last year and I just didn't tell anybody. So, okay. So we've talked about departmental expense. We're now going to talk about budget versus actual. So this is if you right click on the top, right click on this blue bar, it tells you what the official name is for each of these screens. This is the actual versus budget comparison. And this is an example of taking one screen and being able to mold it and do various things with it. This particular case, we have account numbers, we have an account description. I brought in year-to-date actual dollar activity, and then I have my budget, and then I'm able to put this calculates it automatically what the variance is. And then what I've done is for ease of reading, I put in December actual, December budget, variance, November, going all the way back to the beginning of the year. And if this became too tedious, then what you might do is just drop the budget side and maybe just show the variance, which would make it more compact. But again, this is using the column chooser, and you can see this has a lot of activity. We have variances, budget versus the prior year, and actual. Okay. So let's go down. Let's talk about the next one. This is we've retitled this, calling it the Smart Cash Flow Forecast, and I'll tell you in a moment what we mean by that. But 3 or 4 years ago, we got a number of users together and in kind of a forum, and we asked people to come up with ideas for a cash flow statement, cash flow forecast. So we asked people to send us copies of their their forecast so we could use as kind of a pattern. So we developed this, and everything was fine. And then customers, they didn't like this. It wasn't giving them the numbers that they wanted. And one of the reasons was that in this accounts receivable area, your customers, as you know, do not pay based on the invoice date. They pay based on the way they want to pay. So if we could calculate average days to pay, which Macola does already, if we could take the average days to pay and apply that to the cash flow here, then this forecast would be based on each individual customer's average days to pay. So I'll show you what we did. This is the setup. So for each one of these rows, we're going to have a setup. So I'll pull this over a little bit so we can see this. Okay. So we have rules for each one. This is the general ledger balance. There's nothing special about that, or the cash balance. But for accounts receivable now, we have all kinds of different ways. These are some instructions. So what we're doing here is we're taking average days to pay on a 3-month rolling average. In other words, we're not stuck with a lifetime average days to pay. We're going to base it based on the past 3 months. The next one down is customer open order. So we don't need to go through each one of these, but when you're setting this up, if this is applicable to you, as you click on each one, it asks you different things and provides some different options. Okay, well, the next part of the cash flow forecast that needed an enhancement was what we call the non-Macola cash flow items. And in this particular case, it was payroll, outside payroll expenses. It was loan payments that are being made through wire transfers outside of Macola, and then monthly profit distributions. So I'll click on the payroll one. We can see this is saying that I'm trying to see where that, well, yeah, so this is just a way, so I can set up as many non-Macola items as I want to. What I wanted to say was that this was where the numbers are coming from, but let me exit out of here for a minute. In this particular case, I've set up payroll for $150,000 every month. I've set up wire transfers for $50,000 every month, and I can specify what day of the month I want that to come out and be applied here. So you can match up now standard Macola items, cash flow for accounts receivable based on average days to pay, and then also my non-Macola items. So that's why we call it the Smart Cash Flow Forecast. This is a little bit cumbersome to set up, so feel free to call us to if you need some help. There's 3 tabs across the top, and what I was yeah, there's just 3 tabs across the top, and it's a little bit cumbersome sometimes. So feel free to call us, and we'll help you get that set up. Okay, so the next item I have here is I'm taking this same. Now we're on number 5. We're on the monthly general ledger activity. So again, I've taken this actual versus budget comparison, and I've just trimmed it down a little bit. So I'm using this for P&L as well as balance sheet accounts, and I'm just able to see the months across the top: general ledger, January, February, March, April, May, and so on, as well as my year-to-date number. And then, as you would imagine, everything is drill downable. So these are just some different variations that we've developed over time, and I thought that if I put those into the training material, and if I talk about those today, and if that's of interest, you can put a check mark next to it on your material, and you can call up Monty and say, "We talked about this in our training. Will you help me get this set up?" The next item that I want to talk about is project analysis. Now, this does not apply to everybody. It only applies if you're using the project or the job number within Macola. But again, what I've done is I've taken the GL control report, the standard GL control report that we looked at earlier, and I added the job number to it. And recall that when I want to group something, I want to group it. So I just drag this up into this middle row here. See, it says drag a column heading here to group it. So I'm just going to group it this way. I don't really have much data here. And then I can see everything that has to do with that group. But if you are project oriented in your company, this is an excellent way to to track that.
So Mike, if somebody had different marketing activities that were jobs, that would be an example of a way to track the various conferences they went to, their shows they went to, something like that would be one way.
So a lot of it will come in through accounts payable or through purchasing. The purchase order can specify the job or the project, and then when you're vouchering, you can specify the project or the job at the same time. This was a case here of where I'm using the same GL control, and instead of showing all accounts, I've just narrowed it down here. Well, actually, I narrowed it down here in this filter to just one account. And this just might be another way of just focusing on different accounts. Okay, so I'm going to switch to another database that has data that I want to show you. Now, the next few reports are reports that you haven't seen because these are part of our catalog, but I'm going to go into our other database here, and I'm going to go into this standard costing. Okay. This only applies to people who are using standard costing, and that seems to be becoming more and more popular. But let's say that you have two almost identical products. Maybe they just have a little component that differs, but for the most part, the cost of the product is identical, the percent of labor is identical, pretty much the material, the overhead is all pretty much identical. But in your standard costing, you didn't set it up right. Using the standard software, it would be almost impossible to see that error. So in this particular report, and this is a designer report, and what designer report means, it has a little bit of programming behind it. So this report first started off by just showing the cost, total cost, material cost, labor, so on, for each individual item. And that was nice, but it wasn't really thorough because you had to do mental math to figure out which items were set up incorrectly. So we added the percent to it. So this isn't particularly good data to look at. This is the Macola demo data. But again, let's say that your normal labor component of your top product line, let's say your normal labor is 20%. And if you looked over here and you saw it was 0, or you saw that it was 50%, and the two products are identical, you would know that one of the two of them is set up incorrectly. So this particular report for one of our top standard costing customers, this is his hands down most favorite report of all the reports in Dashboard. It's this standard product costing details with percentages. So if you're on standard costing, and if this would be of interest, then you're welcome to this report. Okay. The next report I want to show is in the production area. And let me refresh this. I think this is the one I want. Yeah, well, we can use this. Let me clean these headings up a little bit. When you have a lot of headings, you can right-click and you can say best fit a particular one individual column, or you can say best fit all columns. This one really has too many, but I'll explain. In shop floor, this report normally is planned quantities versus actual quantities, planned labor hours, planned setup hours versus the standard. So people in the shop, their job is to control hours, to control quantities, and not to be concerned about the dollar side of it. So this is actually a report I developed about 10 or 20 years ago, and then we converted it to Visual Basic for Dashboard. So let's take a look at this for a second. At the top, don't worry about the bottom part for a second. We'll just use this as an example. This production order was scheduled for 5. The planned quantity was 5. They've reported 1. They planned 90 hours of labor and they've reported none. So what is the first thing that happens here? What is this telling you? That we're reporting quantities, but we forgot to report labor, or we reported the labor to an incorrect shop order. So immediately we create a big variance. So then we have the same thing here. We have our planned component cost versus our variance. We have our planned labor. I'll make these a little wider. So what we've done here is these are all the variances. Variances for quantity, variances for material, labor, fixed variable overhead, components, or I said components, outside operations, and setup. So if you want to take a look at this, then you just click on here, and then down below, it shows you all the details. So this summary is kind of nice. Again, this isn't real good test data, but the idea would be that you would be able to see the labor dollars versus planned versus actual, and so on. And then to really find out what the problem is, you would click these 3 tabs at the bottom, one for outside operations, one for components, and one for routings. So the idea would be that you would look now to the routing step and see this is the planned hours was 30 for this first step, and you could look at whatever was as well as the setup hours. So this report is becoming more and more, as people want to scrutinize, if they're on standard costing, you're really obligated to, excuse me, to be scrutinizing and analyzing these costs. I think this is probably the best one here to look at. Yeah, so this one is an example of where it's just looking at, let's refresh, this is only looking at quantities. So this is the version of this same report that goes to the plant, to the production people, and then this is the one for the accounting staff or the cost accounting staff. Okay, So I pretty much finished the formal part of our presentation. I think what you're seeing, I'll jump back to the other database. What you're seeing is that all of the accounting information in Macola is available to you through Dashboard. It's available at your fingertips. And so the idea would be that if you're using this and you like using this, then this can easily be, you know, your tool of choice, especially to do analysis, any kind of analysis work. There's one item I did not include in your handout, and that is somebody came to us recently and wanted an accounts receivable payment history. And again, this is a designer report. This has a little bit of code. Monty developed this. He put his name here. He's proud of himself that he can develop these. So somebody came up, their auditors were in, and they wanted to be able to take a certain date range and show the entire history of invoices and how they were, what cash was applied, and if there were credit memos and so on. So again, this is a accounts receivable payment history that's available.
Mike,
okay.
Since we're talking about the smart cash flow and things like that, can you talk a little bit about how people would get forecasted numbers into the system?
Oh yes, very good question. There's if I go back to the summary and general ledger and we come all the way to the top, the beginning of it is, this is our order summary, actual versus budget, actual versus budget. This budget is coming out of the general ledger. So you go to executive and you go to budgets, and we've established a booking budget, a shipment budget, and a backlog budget. So this is pulling the information directly out of the general ledger. If we're talking about an operations budget, then you go up to sales and marketing, and you go up here to budget forecast entry. And then here, if you have your budget in Excel, we can import it. If you want to create your budget from history and then make adjustments to it, we can. And these budgets are at the dollar level, at the units level, at the target selling price level, and at the target margin level. And this is what comes with it now by customer, salesperson, item, items within customer, and so on and so on. So once this is established, and you can have an unlimited number of budgets or forecasts, and you can also skew this. If you're on if you have a big seasonality, you can change this to adjust this to your seasons. Did that answer your question?
I think so. Thank you.
There was one thing that I forgot to show before, and I was stumbling because I can't remember, but I just found it. And that is in the cash flow forecast, how do I tell Macola, how do I tell Dashboard what my non-Macola entries are? So I'll do this again. I'm going to X out of this. I go up to the executive module and I go to cash flow entry. And remember, we talked about payroll, and we talked about loan payments, and we talked about profit distributions. And this is how you set that up. So I set up on the last day of the month, or the 28th of each month, my payroll is $150,000. I have loan payments of $50,000 on the first of each month, and I have these profit distributions on the first of each month for $100,000. We're done a little bit early today. Are there questions that anybody has on not just the financial area, but any other area within Dashboard, or ideas that you might have for enhancing our product? Oh, we have to make sure that people are off mute. Sorry about that.
I was just going to say they can unmute themselves too if they put a PIN number in.
Yeah. And there's some people who I'm just unmuting them. Some people are self-muted. If you want to be muted, I can't unmute you. So so anybody have any questions? Yeah, I think we have everybody. Anybody have any questions on what we've talked about today or any other aspect of our dashboard software?
Hey, Mike.
Yes.
On the cash flow analysis on the financial, the smart cash flow, can you change those buckets to weekly?
Oh, yes. Yes. These are, you can have 24 columns across the top, and they can be a combination of months, which is these 30-day increments, and this is by week.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Thanks.
Yep. And you do that within this setup right here, this period setup. And this is a little bit confusing. So feel free to call us, but you can see I have month, and then I have week down here. You see it says week starting. Yeah, so you can make this go out as far as you want to. And it was really funny when we had this, you may laugh also, when we had this, this focus group, I had people sending me their real live cash flow forecasts. And along with their real live budgets for the year and all. So of course we kept all that confidential and ended up destroying it all. But it was, we got a lot of insight as to how, and the struggle was people, the more, let me give you a picture here. That just, how long did that take? 2 seconds?
Yep.
Yep, that was, for those of us who have done cash flow forecasts, then you'll know that this is a huge time saver. Yeah, so feel free to call us. Don't feel free to call us. There was no way we could simplify the setup. So, but it definitely is very, very powerful, and everything has drill down.
I don't see any other questions in the chat, Mike. Okay.
I was also going to bring up that we have a lot going on in the world right now. We have this virus going on. We have oil at the lowest level ever. That's affecting people adversely, or in some cases good, but mostly adverse. We've been thinking about setting up kind of a Macola roundtable, just talking about for people that are being adversely affected by either the virus or oil or anything else that may be going on in the world. Maybe it's foreign competition, or maybe it's surcharges, the trade war that's going on with China. Like we have customers that buy 90% of their products from China. And I was talking to one the other day, and luckily they had just gotten their big, huge, several containers had just arrived, so they weren't being affected. But so we were thinking about trying to come up with, kind of an exchange of ideas, or using Dashboard. Like in Dashboard, we have in the sales and marketing area, we have this analysis, this margin analysis, which you just cannot do manually. And this is a margin analysis by product category, or a margin analysis by customer, or a margin analysis by brand, or whatever you might want to have it. And this tells you, where your margin erosions are, or if you're being attacked, where, what's still going well, and put more energy into that. So if anybody has any thoughts on that, we don't have to talk today particularly, unless you want to, but we're thinking about doing something like that.
Mike, I do have one question. When you're looking at the variances window, can it show multiple shop orders for the same item?
Yes. In other words, if you took out shop order and made it item, I think it will do that. If that's what this, for closed orders, this is designed. Unfortunately, I don't have any good data in this. Let's say that we had 20 shop orders for the same item. And if you were then, and it's listing them here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 20, you'd be able to then see over time, that's the purpose of this, to see over time what has been your profit on that, or what has been your problem. So for example, if you have a labor problem, a labor reporting problem, you'll see that, and that maybe that will tell you something. Either the standards are wrong, or maybe you have the people who are working on that aren't real diligent with applying their labor, recording their labor. So, but originally it was designed to be able to show the 10 separate rows. But I think if you take this shop order off there, it will consolidate it by item number. Well, you'll have to take off the date as well, because that's what makes it unique, these two fields.
That makes sense. Okay. Right. Anything else from anybody? We have a couple more minutes.
Okay. Well, otherwise, thanks very much for joining today. We sure appreciate your support of our software. We're always looking for new ideas, so please feel free if you have ideas. And a lot of those are just, they're real down 1% kind of ideas, 0.5%. But that's part of our brand is, this never-ending journey of continuous improvements and more reports and so on. Like this one that I showed you just before that was on accounts receivable history. That was something we developed just last week. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Have a good rest of the week, and appreciate you joining today.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.